environmental law and criminal law.
So we're going to start with environmental law.
And so here are some of the environmental laws, most of which we might discuss for the most part today: the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, a little bit from the Safe Drinking Water Act. All of these, in many respects, are enforced through the Environmental Protection Agency, which is a governmental agency. So you're going to have your federal, these are some of the ways that some of these environmental laws can be enforced, one of which would be federal environmental laws that are primarily implemented and enforced by the United States Environmental Protection Agency. So whenever you see the EPA throughout these slides, that's what we mean, the United States Environmental Protection Agency. And then in some respects, you'll have your citizen watchdog groups who also help to enforce some of these violations that go on in the environment. You're going to see examples of this as we continue to discuss this topic.
Move over
Here to water and look at how water pollution is regulated and in many respects by the same EPA agency. And so the pollution of waterways is one of the biggest challenges facing the environmental policy makers. And when they talk about the pollution of waterways, it's coming from all different types of sources. And so you can have this Clean Water Act regulating a puddle of water on somebody's land. In some respects, I'm going back again to the politics of it. The Republicans are saying maybe that's too much regulation. And so then you'll see them start to pull back on those types of regulations because they have effect on businesses like farms and that those types of businesses to allow them to not to be bogged down with so much regulation. And so these waters, it is said, and it's because of these types of problems, a puddle on somebody's land that is contaminated, let's say, i.e. some type of let's say we have a pig farm, and there are, runoff from from a pig farm, from waste from the animals on that farm, from a puddle of water that finds its way into our larger bodies of water. And so these are the reasons that we have these types of regulations. And so water pollution and conservation regulation is addressed by a combination of state, federal, and local laws.
In the movie Erin Brockovich, Julia Roberts played the tough and relentless paralegal who brought PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, to its knees. One memorable scene, Brockovich fighting PG&E lawyers to compensate her clients, the residents of Hinckley, California.
I want you to think real hard about what your spine is worth, Mr. Walker. Or what you might expect someone to pay you for your uterus, Miss Sanchez. Then you take out your calculator and you multiply that number by 100. Anything less than that is a waste of our time.
PG&E eventually wrote checks totaling $333 million to more than 600 residents.
So they come to you and they say $333 million, and you were like,
holy shit. I mean, it's pretty cool. I was excited for these people.
13 years later, the excitement is now replaced with fear. Recent evidence indicates the same underground chemical plume that caused so much illness and heartbreak here is growing.
And I'm thinking somebody somewhere has been asleep at the wheel.
after an enormous settlement and the worldwide attention that came with a Hollywood film, people who live here thought their problems would have ended a long time ago. But it turns out those toxic chemicals have been spreading over time.
That's a finding by the State Water Control Board. Brockovich puts the blame squarely on PG&E.
This is a company that has great technology. They certainly have the money. You can't control this plume here in Hinckley after everything that's happened? It makes no sense to me.
The plume is 2 miles long and nearly a mile wide. It's made up of hexavalent chromium, a chemical once used by PG&E in the 50s and 60s to prevent rust in the machinery at a nearby plant. It's the same chemical that seeped into the groundwater here and can cause life-threatening illnesses. Roberta Walker received an undisclosed amount of money in the settlement for illnesses she blames on the contamination.
I've had several stomach surgeries. I've had a hysterectomy. I've had several lumps removed from my breast, and I've got asthma now.
So when Walker learned the hex chromium is now moving towards the very home she moved to get away from the danger, she naturally thought,
Oh my God, it's like being struck by lightning twice. You know, it's like, how can this possibly be happening to me again? It's like a cancer.
PG&E says great strides have been made in cleaning up the contamination. So how could this happen after everything the community endured? A top company official agreed to meet with us at its San Francisco headquarters.
These people, they're concerned about their water. They're concerned about their way of life. Are those concerns justified?
The approach that we're taking with the residents in Hinckley is we're committed to working with those individuals that live in Hinckley, either directly over the plume or in the adjacent vicinity to the plume.
The utility denies it's been asleep at the wheel and says it's difficult to contain the chemical, but also says it has a comprehensive plan to do so, including pumping in more than 100,000 gallons of fresh water each day into the underground plume to block the contaminants from advancing. It says the water quality on or near the plume meets safety guidelines set by the state of California. But with growing unrest, not to mention bad PR, the utility, as of last week, took the momentous step of offering to buy all the properties of those affected. We're told it could be as many as 100 homes.
Take accountability for what they've done. Come out here and make it right by these people.
PG&E promises it will. Brockovich and others will be watching.
Yeah, but, so PG&E is saying they're gonna bring in water and they're gonna try to flush out that contamination by flushing water through that plume, that area that is contaminated. So maybe I need to hold it up a little bit more. But this is like the contaminated area. It goes down, this is a top layer of the ground, and so then this is the contaminated area here. So there's somebody's home right there. So my question is, if you live in that neighborhood, it seems that area is still contaminated. Would you stay there in that neighborhood? A for yes, B for no. Nobody's saying that. Some people, someone. So you can see why it seems that we need to have some type of regulation in some areas. If you don't have a regulation, then the business is just gonna do whatever they want to do. I mean, until they get caught, they're just going to do whatever they want to do. Now, on the one hand, they're saying that they can clean up that contaminated area. On the other hand, they're saying they will buy up every house in the neighborhood. When you say to me, I will buy up every house in the neighborhood, that lets me know you can't clean up that area.